My son, Mark, was a very easy baby. My husband, Julian, who was my boyfriend at the time, were only 20 when we found out that I was pregnant. He used a condom and I was on the pill. But despite this, the astronomical odds of me getting pregnant happened. We were obviously in a deal of shock, but decided to go forward with the pregnancy anyway. After all, with the chance of pregnancy being so low, this baby is a miracle, isn't he? Fast forward 8 months and I'm in the delivery room. A bit earlier than most babies, but the doctor assured me that a month early wasn't anything to get in a fuss about. After 37 hours of pain and labor, my son popped out. He was a beautiful 6-pound, 8-ounce bundle. But the strange thing was, he didn't cry. The doctors and nurses were concerned at first, but after checking his airway and seeing that everything was fine, and they just wrote it off as one of those rare instances of a quiet baby. Little did I know that he would be a quiet baby his whole life. Mark hardly ever cried. In fact, he didn't even cry to tell me he was hungry. From birth until he was old enough to talk, I had set up a timer on my phone to let me know when it was feeding time again. And as for diaper changes, well, we didn't have to worry about those for too long. As soon as Mark had enough physical strength to start walking, around 10 months old, he had marched himself into the potty. It sounds far-fetched, I know, but honest to God, it happened. And we supposed it made sense. Mark always had an aversion to using diapers. I can still remember the day that we came back from the hospital, and my husband was trying to change Mark's diaper. Babe. My husband called warily. I hummed to him, preoccupied with setting up the baby's clothes. He hasn't gone, Julian stated confusedly. I turned to his direction. What? Surely he didn't mean what I thought. What do you mean he hasn't gone? He's dry. I was a bit worried about this, so I called up the doctor who had delivered Mark and I asked for his help. He told me that perhaps the baby was just dehydrated, and that I should feed him more often until we could set up a time to see Mark tomorrow. I felt awful hanging up the phone without proper assurance that Mark would be fine, but I suppose the doctor was right, and it was about time to feed the baby anyway. I took the doctor's advice and gave him a bottle right then and there. He fussed at first, not wanting to take the bottle's nipple, but eventually started suckling after realizing that I wasn't going to let up. Mike fell asleep while drinking, and when he woke up, his diaper, much to his chagrin, was wet. And it was weird. He almost looked annoyed that we had to change him too. We had soon picked up on the pattern that Mark would hold his urine for as long as he could manage, and then wet his diaper while napping. It was odd, but the doctor said he was physically fine otherwise, so we just accepted it. And life went on for me, my husband, and our quiet baby boy. It was at Mark's first birthday when we first noticed his affliction to fire. We had put one small candle on his cupcake, and after lighting it, Mark covered his eyes. He didn't cry, no. Mark never cried, but instead, he covered his eyes and started shaking his head, repeating, "No," over and over. Julie and I exchanged a look of concern before blowing out Mark's candle and cooing to him. "It's alright, baby, it's gone," I assured. Mark slowly lifted his hands from his eyes and looked up to us. His eyes were glossy, like there may have been tears present, but none fell. We scooped him up and hugged him. "No more candles, okay?" He squeezed me back, and I took it as an okay. And everything else about that day went fine. He happily opened his gifts, a small boy rabbit and a Lego set, smiling and thanking us in his tiny, lisp-cased voice. His speech was remarkable for his age. Well, everything about Mark was remarkable, really. All of our friends were jealous when they started having babies. "Oh, my Molly keeps me up all night with the crying," my friend Liz said. And she seems irritated when I told her that I couldn't relate. "Oh, really? Mark sleeps through the night. He hardly ever cries." Which was true. He never had an issue sleeping. But he did toss and turn, like he had been having some type of wild dreams. Yeah, needless to say that we lost a few friends down the line. You would never think it, but mommies are the most cold-hearted people when it comes to anyone but their own kids. But we got a few new friends as Mark got older. Around age 2, when he was big enough to run around with other kids, we had taken him to the playground. There, we met Stacy and her daughter, Kayla. They were the same age, but Mark seemed disinterested and pleased to play. Kayla tugged his shirt, begging him to build a sandcastle with her, but he just stared at me with a bored expression. I called him over and I tried to reason with him. "Just go and play with her, even if you find it boring, okay?" He sighed and he went off to build a castle. By now, I pretty much knew what Mark was. He was an old soul. A kid who thought he was a grown-up, and very much lacked interest in things kids his age would normally like. After a few months of getting to know Stacy, she invited me, Julian, and Mark to eat at a restaurant her and her husband owned. We happily agreed and got dressed in our best outfits. Mark even had an adorable little bow tie, which he actually said that he liked. But what we didn't know was that the restaurant was one of the kinds where they cook the food in front of you. By now, we had all known to avoid fire at all costs, no longer using candles at birthdays, or taking advantage of the fire pit we had been given as a housewarming gift. We sat at the table. Mark places himself in Julian's lap. Stacy and her husband, Kev, sat in a row beside us. Eventually, a man came out, took our orders, and began to cook. We watched in awe as he tossed an egg into the air and caught it on the blade of his knife. Even Mark perked up and gave an amazed, "Wow." Everything was going smoothly until the dang chef got out a bottle of oil and doused it on the stovetop. It happened in slow motion. The oil reacted with whatever was on the stove and created a huge flame. We watched as the flame shot up in the air, and Mark jumped back into Julian's chest, giving an ear-piercing shriek. He grabbed onto Julian for dear life. He even soiled himself in surprise and fear. And then for the first time in his life, Mark began to cry. Not just any cry, no. Mark let out the most pained, most heart-wrenching cry that I'd ever heard. We were in shock for a moment. "God, I'm so sorry," the chef apologized. "No, you're fine," I assured. "We should get him home," I said to Stacy and Kev. They apologized profusely for upsetting Mark, but Julian and I assured them that it wasn't their fault. We got Mark in the car and covered his soiled trousers with a blanket until we got home. He sat in the car seat with his thumb in his mouth and tears lacing his cheeks, both of those things he had never done. Up until tonight, I thought Mark would rather eat a bug than cry or suck his thumb. When we got home, I drew Mark a bath. He was still giving little sniffs and whimpers while he bathed. I felt awful, wanting nothing more than to help my little baby boy feel better. Julian and I laid with Mark in our bed after the bath, rubbing his back. I exchanged a look with Julian, and he knew what to do next. In the car, we had had a quiet conversation about talking to Mark about his fear of fire. Julian was questionable at first. "He's a baby," he said. "How's he gonna know why he's afraid of such a silly little thing?" I scoffed. "Do you really think Mark, of all kids, isn't going to know something?" And Julian quieted at the question. Mark knew seemingly everything. He answered questions that even most adults would have to Google. Despite being so young, he was wise way beyond his years. "Mark, buddy," I asked as Julian continued to rub his back. He didn't make a sound or even move. but I continued anyway. Why does the fire scare you so bad? Mark had stopped breathing. His whole little body stiffened and he looked at me with fear in his eyes. Don't make me tell you, he said in a small voice. Hey, Julian comforted. It's okay, we won't be angry or anything. Mark looked at him and back to me. Really? He asked, tears now falling down his face. Really, I confirmed. There's nothing you can say that will ever make mommy or daddy angry, okay? Mark looked assured, but still tense. He took a breath, probably for confidence, and shakily told us his story. I was here before. He sounded like he was really trying to find the right way to say that sentence, but that's the best that he could do. What do you mean? I said. He sighed in frustration. It's hard. Calm down, Julian said softly. It's okay, take your time. Mark sat quietly for a few moments. You could see the gears in his mind turning, trying to find the words to explain what he was thinking. Finally, he spoke. I was here before, lived before, a long time ago. I think my soul left my body. I mean, what do you say to that? When I was a kid, older than now, my mommy burned me. She threw gasoline on me and lit a match. It hurt, Mommy. It hurt so bad. My skin boiled and fell on the floor. And... Mark's words broke off into deep, terrified sobs. It's okay, baby. It's okay. I hugged him tightly. He kept going. I burned for hours, and back then, Mommy laughed. She laughed while I screamed. I stayed there screaming until I stopped. He became less frantic now, and continued to hold me tightly. Julian and I exchanged wild expressions. We were dumbfounded by what Mark had just described. I mean, Jesus, what kind of 2-year-old thinks of that? Surely, it must have been true. We never let him watch any kind of movie or show with any type of graphic, disturbing violence such as that. We all sat in stunned silence, until Mark passed out on my arms. All the trauma from reliving his memory must have tired him. Julian and I tried to rationalize what we had just been told, but we just couldn't. And even now, 10 years after the fact, we still don't know if Mark's story was just that, or if it was real. He's 12 now, and doesn't remember what he had once told us. But even after all these years, he's still afraid of fire. It was late November 2018, when me and 2 of my friends decided to go walking in the woods around my house. My father had recently bought 6,000 acres of woodland, deep in the countryside just outside of Hampshire. It was a rather spacious area, but I had no idea the secrets that the woods held. Me and 2 friends whose names I've changed for privacy walked into the woods, deciding to take torches with us, although it was only 5 p.m., but the trees were barely a few feet apart. We had to turn the torches on after walking about a mile into the woods. As we walked, we began to notice that the ground was getting rockier, the rocks slowly turning into a broken down wall. And then I noticed something old, rusted, iron, embedded into the ground. Shining the torch around, I noticed how high the wall had gotten. If I had to guess, I would say it was about 15 feet high. That's when one of my friends, Mark, said, "Hey guys, I think we found an old castle or something." Another friend, Amy, piped up and said, "Mark, don't be dumb. There are loads of ruins like this dotted around Hampshire." Their conversation faded as I wandered in through what must have been a gatehouse. The wooden ceiling rotted away with moss and mushrooms holding the walls up. "Danny!" Mark shouted. "Where'd you go?" I poked my head around the moldy door frame and shouted, "In here, and Amy, I think he's right." All three of us wandered through the small gateway and shone our torches around. About 30 feet away from what we thought to be the courtyard was a border wall, just shorter than the gatehouse. Made from what looked to be the same stones and woodworm-eaten, moldy wood were some buildings, or rather, the remnants of buildings. We wandered around for about half an hour before I found an odd-looking old iron trapdoor, set in the old stone floor of one of the more complete buildings. I shouted to Mark and Amy, "Guys, I think I'm onto something here." They both came running. "Well, would you look at that?" Amy exclaimed. "Should we open it?" asked Mark. "Well, duh." All while, I was investigating the trapdoor. "Well, come on then," Mark said, becoming agitated, nudging me with his foot. "Open it," he exclaimed. "Jesus, Mark, okay, just let me." I hit the trapdoor where it was locked on the inside with the butt of my torch. Hearing something click, Mark pushed me out of the way and began pulling on the handle. "God, man, calm down," Amy said, watching him become more and more frantic with each pull. Amy put a hand on his shoulder and pulled him away softly. "Here," she said, "let me help." Amy began to pull on the door, me standing to the side thinking, "Wait, why would it be locked from the inside?" Mark interrupted me. "Danny, stop overthinking things." I walked slowly towards the two when Amy said, "Got it." As the door swung slowly open, a wafting smell of dank and musty air hit us in the face. "Ooh, man," Mark said. "That's awful." As Amy peered over the edge, she said, "Stop complaining, Mark. It's no worse than your bedroom." As Mark reacted to that comment, Amy was lowering herself down, legs first. "Is it safe down there?" "From what I can see, yes." I peered over the edge. Shining my torch into the blackness below, I helped Amy down. The clack of Amy's shoes echoed through what appeared to be a large tunnel. As I lowered her torch down to her, Mark looked around the woods, an eerie look across his face. "Everything okay, Mark?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, looking down at his watch. "Hey, Danny," he asked. "Yeah," I sort of yelled back. "What time does your watch read?" I looked down at my watch and I gasped. 9:03. Didn't we leave at 5 p.m.? Amy looked up wide-eyed. "My phone says 9:03 too." "Weird." I replied before starting to lower myself down the hole. "Mark, you coming?" "Yeah," he shouts back down. Once all of us were down in the tunnel, I shone my torch around and looked at the moth-eaten banners on the walls. "God, some of this stuff looks like it dates back to the Crusades," Amy exclaimed. Walking further into the darkness, the air got hotter and stuffier. It seemed like we were going deeper into the earth. Gradually, the stone-walled tunnel began to get rougher and rougher until it was rough rock, lit only by torches. We walked further into the tunnel before it opened into a cavern with a pillar of rock holding up the ceiling. "No way," Amy exclaimed. "It sure is," Mark paused. Although it felt human enough for moss to coat the walls of the cavern, it was surprisingly bare-walled. "Guys, get a load of this," Mark shouted as he pointed his torch into a foot-wide hole. As we all crowded around the hole, Mark's torch hit something in the hole, reflecting light back to us for a second. "What the heck?" I shouted. "Yeah, I saw something weird too." Amy looked at me quizzically. "I didn't see anything," Mark said. "Mark, get away from there." There was a clicking sound, slowly getting louder. "Mark, you idiot, listen to Danny." Amy shouted, and there was a louder click and then a crack that echoed around the cavern. Staring at Mark, I slowly came to the realization that his neck had snapped. My suspicions were confirmed when Mark's body slumped to the ground, his neck twisting at an unnatural angle as his body hit the ground. "Oh God," I shouted. Amy, behind the pillar, quick! As Amy and I ran behind the pillar, something unfurled itself from the hole. It was horrifying. Towering over me and Amy, it was pale, white, and skeletal, standing about 8 feet tall, its arms abnormally long, nearly reaching down to its knees, and ending in hands with fingers longer than my forearms, nails sharpening to points. Looking at the thing's stomach, it had arrows stuck into its upper chest, and a sword embedded into its abdomen. The handle looked mangled, as if the thing had tried to pull it out itself. The thing's head was nearly faceless, slits for the eyes with the whites being nearly a putrid yellow, bloodshot with wide black pupils. The nose was just 2 holes, like the one the thing crawled out of, going back into its head. The mouth I couldn't see at first, but when it looked at Mark's body, it smiled, revealing sets of sharp, jagged yellow teeth, the mouth stretching so far that it looked like its head should have split in half. We looked down in horror as it grabbed Mark by the ankle, pulling him away, dragging him along the floor, his jacket pulling up, and ripping around his head. After the thing had stalked its way down another passageway, Amy and I exchanged looks of fear. She began to run back to the stone-walled section of the passage. I pulled her back and held her for a minute, just beginning to forget where we were before. I heard a noise that will stick with me for the rest of my life. It was a mix between the mating call of a fox and a woman screaming in agony. This made Amy and I jump up and nearly out of our skin. The only things we could see were the shadows of one, no 2, of those godforsaken creatures projected onto the wall by Mark's fallen torch. Amy and I looked down in horror as one of the creatures screeched at the other, and then it turned towards us. A screech later, and me and Amy were running, back down the way that we came. We were nearly there when Amy screamed. She had fallen. I looked back and stopped, only to see the creature pounce on Amy and bite a chunk out of her shoulder. I ran again, only to crash into something. Staring back at me was the pale white, sunken chest of one of those things. I was stuck. I sank to the floor in defeat. The creature looked at me, as if understanding. That's when I felt it. The kind of hunger that you can't get rid of by eating. But I ate the only thing left in sight. Amy. I wish I could do more, but the supple flesh drew me in further and further. Take it as a warning. Use me as a cautionary tale. If I could speak to you, I would. But all I can do is screech and scrape away in the dark. A faceless husk. My warning to you. If you ever find the ruins of a castle deep in the English woods, run.